when you begin to develop a culture within a business, it's got to be something that comes from the heart and soul. It's got to be something that's authentic. In order to get to that, you have to ask deep questions, and you have to ask them of all of your stakeholders.
You're listening to episode 157 of the Fitness Business Podcast. We'd like to thank our foundation partner, Active Management. Since 2004, they've helped people like you make more sales, shape better leaders, reduce ownership stress, and this year they help you think and do different. To find out more, go to activemgmt.com.au. Welcome along and thank you so much for joining me. I'm your host Chantal Broderick, and this week we're chatting about building an authentic culture in your fitness business. Our special guest is Jan Spaticchia, the Chairman, CEO and co-founder of the Energy Group. With a widespread reputation for his entrepreneurial flair, leadership and vision, Jan has over 24 years experience in the health, fitness and leisure industry. In this time, he's taken several businesses from initial concept to successful established brands. As a highly sought-after international speaker, Jan has presented at major events in 15 countries around the world, focusing on business development, entrepreneurship, motivation, and the management of change. During our show this week, Jan shares some key questions to ask about your fitness business. We chat about how to ensure culture is part of the business, regardless if you're in one location or many, and we discuss ways to measure the success of your culture. Before we move into the interview, I want to thank this month's premier podcast partner. Since 2004, Active Management have helped people like you make more sales, shape better leaders, reduce ownership stress, and this year they will help you think and do different. For as low as $49 a year, you'll have access to resources to make your business life easier. To find out more, go to activemgmt.com.au. Jan, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
My absolute pleasure, Chantal.
Now, before we get stuck into the main questions for today, I thought because we are talking about culture, it would be a good idea if we started by setting the scene and you can tell everyone a little bit about the Energy Group.
Absolutely. Chantal, we started the business in 2003. It was a real accidental beginning. We became the first fitness franchise group in the UK. I'm very aware that in New Zealand, Australia and America, franchising has been prolific for many years. But in 2003, it just hadn't been tried in the UK marketplace. The business began from very humble beginnings, literally from my dining room. It was an investment rather than a business for me. And 13 years later, I'm still here as Chairman and Chief Executive. The business is now almost 100 clubs strong, 26 million network turnover, around 124,000 members, 2 million visits per year, and growing strongly. We'll be opening some 30 clubs this year, and we're now spread across 5 territories.
Let's dive straight into it, Jan. How do you actually determine what culture you want within your business?
I think, first of all, it's important to say that a culture has to be authentic. And for it to be authentic, I don't think it can be engineered. I think it needs to be developed naturally. But you have to start with a really clear vision. I mentioned to you last week that I'm a great follower of Jim Collins and Built to Last and Good to Great. And I really enjoyed the story of how Sony begun. Sony begun in a bombed-out factory in downtown Tokyo post-war, when the country had really lost its identity. And even before Sony made a decision on what industry it was going to be in, it had a vision of what it was going to do. And what it was going to do is it was going to make Made in Japan stand for quality and not shoddy. And that was even before they decided what business to get into. Many people won't know that soup and agriculture were the first thoughts that they had. But they actually had a vision of what they existed for, what their purpose was, even before they knew what industry they were going to be in. And I think when you begin to develop a culture within a business, It's got to be something that comes from the heart and soul. It's got to be something that's authentic. In order to get to that, you have to ask deep questions, and you have to ask them of all of your stakeholders. Energy just recently revisited our culture, and it took a year to do it. We called it the big conversation. We spoke to all of our stakeholders, our shareholders, our banks, our suppliers. We spoke to our members. We spoke to our ex-members. We spoke to the people that had never been members before but were part of our communities. We spoke to our staff and we spoke to our franchisees. And it's only through deep questioning of those truly involved in your business that you can really get an insight as to what your true purpose is, and thereby get to the real essence of your culture. And we've only had to do that twice in the 14 years we've been in existence. And each time it's been a very, very revealing process.
When you went through that process, did you call it the big conversation?
The big conversation.
Yeah. When you went through that process, can you, just for any of our listeners out there that might think, wow, that's an exercise that we need to go through for our business, would you be open to sharing with us maybe a couple of those questions that you asked the stakeholders in the business?
Absolutely. We really wanted to get back to our grassroots. We wanted to get back to our purpose. Energy's stated purpose since it began is empowering people to transform their lives. We see this at three levels. One, we look to empower our franchisees. These may be people who are in a job that they don't enjoy, or they're in a career path that it's not for them. And some of our franchisees are risking a significant amount of their wealth, their net worth, in order to take a risk and go for it alone. And we believe that we're empowering our franchisees to transform their own lives and the lives of their families. We also look to create a career environment where it truly is possible for a fitness instructor to go to a club manager to then become a club owner. We've got several examples of where that's occurred, and it's so exhilarating when it does. And then most importantly, our members who come to us with needs. And when we fulfill those needs, when we truly empower them to take control of their lives in a way that they've never done before, then you really do know you're getting to the essence of what your business is about and your true purpose. I think any business over time loses its way. We certainly have lost our way on certain aspects of this. I think it's very easy to come back to the norm and simply be doing what everybody else does. But if you're truly going to be authentic with your culture, then you've got to be living it, and you've got to be living it every day, and you've got to test it on a regular basis. Some of the questions we had to ask is, are we serving the people we truly set out to serve? We were attracting people from the same places as other fitness operators were, those people that always go to gyms. But that only represents some 14% of the UK population. What's happening with everybody else? We're truly proud of the fact that we reach out to members that have never exercised before. And that truly is central to our core purpose. And we'd lost our way, and we had to bring ourselves back to centre. So asking questions of our staff and of our members and of those people that have never used our clubs before, of what is it that would truly empower you, really helped us get to the root of what our business is all about.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jan. Now, building a culture within a business or within a team that's under the one roof is one thing. But you talked about the fact that you've actually got, I think, 100 franchisees out there and then another 30 coming on in 2018. Have I got those numbers correct?
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that culture actually becomes part of the DNA of the business when you're having to reach so far?
The simple answer, Chantal, is that it is very difficult. I had an early career that consisted of building fitness groups, 7 clubs and then 10 clubs, where as the group got further away from me, so it became more dilute. And it is significantly more difficult as a business gets bigger. I think it was Richard Branson that says the magic is to build a gigantic business that operates like a small business. And that's very difficult to do. We're very fortunate that we're in the franchising business. And for that reason, we work through some very talented and very passionate owners who operate businesses in their own communities. And I think that's what makes it possible for us. I have to be completely candid and say, and my own experience is when you build a large group that is controlled from centre, it's very difficult to embed a culture that's authentic. But the advantage of doing it through a franchise network is each and every club is owned by somebody that is invested in that local community. And I believe that that makes a true difference, both in terms of the nature of the culture and the authenticity of the culture, when the owner is actually there in the mix. And I think that gives us a great advantage. It does have challenges, though. It does mean you have to deal with the fact that not everybody gets it. And I come back here to Built to Last and Good to Great, Jim Collins's great pieces of work. It's about tightness of fit. Hewlett-Packard were very well known for not having simply one centre. What they would do is they would build regional head office in a town, and then they would effectively become part of the fabric of that town, so that the people that worked with them got to live the HP way. And that kind of almost cult-like culture, that tightness of fit, creates a unity that's very, very powerful, and it's very difficult to break. And when you've got that, people that don't fit almost get repelled like a virus. There's a tightness of fit, and there's a culture that is what the business is about, where if you fit, you fit, and if you don't fit, there'll be another place that you fit that just isn't here. And Collins puts it very well. Everybody thinks that working for a good to great company is a great place to work. It's not. Working for a good to great company is a great place to work for people that understand a good to great culture. For everybody else, it'd be a lousy place to work. So I would say to you that the answer to the question is you have to hire for attitude, train for skill. And when you find the right people that fit within a culture that everybody subscribes to, actually becomes very natural.
Jan, how important is it to get members of the team, the greater team, together on a regular basis or on an annual basis, whether that be for a conference or for meetings? What role does that play in extending the culture within the business?
I think it's really important, and we certainly on a regular basis bring our teams together, be it for a conference, for a retreat, for simply to measure against the objectives and see where we are, to have a kind of a health check on where we are against the objectives. They're all essential. However, I don't think they're as important as actually living it day by day. I think it's very easy to just turn the development of culture into a program. You know, it's a program that has a fancy tagline, and you have the big conference, and you have the way day, and everybody lives in a false environment for those days, and then they go back to the day job, and nothing changes. I feel what is actually more important is living it day by day, and it's got to come from the top. It's no good creating a culture which expects one behaviour if the leadership behave in a completely different way. If the culture is that you're systematic and you're punctual and meetings start on time and minutes always go out on a regular basis and very punctually, but then the leaders don't do it, then nobody's going to follow that culture. Nobody's going to buy into that culture. So I do believe that events and team building and conferences, they're all important, certainly. But actually, it's walking the talk. It's being out there every day and living it. That's what really makes the difference.
You mentioned before that you did that, the big conversation. So you went out to the market to kind of do a bit of a check on whether or not you were on track and if you needed to make any changes. How do you actually measure the success of culture? Is it in those kind of exercises like you did with the big conversation? What are the ways that you look at the business overall and say, yep, we're on track, we are being successful in, disseminating the culture across the business?
I think that there are hard measures and soft measures. Let's deal with the hard measures first of all. I think one of the greatest KPIs for measuring whether you're on track with culture is your staff retention. You know, if you're creating a culture which is a place that people want to work, a place where people really truly believe that they belong, then that will show up in your staff retention. If people are with you for long periods of time because they couldn't imagine working anywhere else, then you've got something right with your culture. And that actually translates very well into membership. Do you know what? You don't actually have to have a great culture to sell memberships. You can sell memberships into a club with a lousy culture. But to keep members, now that's something very different. Our original club was built in 1995. It's still there today, and you might notice there's some mathematical problems there because Energy is only 14 years old, and 1995 is 23 years ago. My first club, which is still part of the group today, was built as an independent club in 1995. We still have members in that club that were there 23 years ago who have been members without interruption all of that time. I wish I could say that about every one of our clubs, but not all of our clubs are that old. But I would like to think that we've got owners that have got their culture so well embedded that 20 years from now, they'll have members that have been there all of that time. So I think retention is the greatest measure of culture. But you also can measure staff engagement by simply looking at the way that the team address culture within the group. I'll give you a good example, a little story. I was running a smaller group some years ago, and it was only a small group of clubs, and I was recruiting people and then finding they were leaving quite quickly, and actually leaving without me having to force them to leave, or without them even going through a process of telling me that they were going to leave. They just seemed to disappear. And I had no idea why this was happening. And then I came upon a discovery, and that was that I'd built a team that had been together for a long time. The team in this particular club was 5 years together, and they created a real culture amongst them, which said, we know people that fit in here. They're hardworking, they smile a lot, they're good to be around, they're polite to the members, and they do their bit and they have everybody else's backs. And as soon as I recruited somebody in that didn't fit with that culture, it turned out that it sorted itself out because the team made it very clear that it wasn't going to work. I didn't know they were doing it, but it turned out there was a thing called the Walk to the Swan. And the Swan was a pub down the high street near the club that we're talking about. And that basically meant that the team had taken it upon themselves, if somebody didn't fit in and they weren't going to be the right person for the team, I never had to deal with it. It dealt with itself. And I think it shows you that you can sometimes see whether your culture is working just by looking at the behaviour of your team and the way that they operate and how protective they are of the culture that they've created.
That's a great gauge. Now, we're going to have people that are listening to this conversation, Jan, some of whom are brand new to establishing their business, some that may have been fitness business owner or a manager for a long period of time now. So I'm hoping you might be able to leave us with today your 3 tips on how to actually get started with building a culture within a fitness business. So that's whether they are brand new or whether perhaps they need to make some changes to the existing culture within their business.
Absolutely happy to. First of all, I'd say ask deep and searching questions, and ask those questions of all of your stakeholders. Even if you're a small business, you've all got staff, you've all got members, you've all got ex-members, you've all got, and this is very important, those people that live in the communities that you serve who've never been to your club. They're much harder to get to, but they'll give you a much better insight into where you're getting it right and, more importantly, where you're getting it wrong. I'd also say that in asking those questions, be open to the answers not being the ones you want. You can't be defensive. You need to let people speak and speak the truth and let the truth be told. And coming back to Collins, face the brutal truths. If the brutal truths mean that you need to change, then change. So ask questions and ask them relentlessly. Secondly, hire for attitude, train for skill. We can train anybody to do any job in the club, but you can't train attitude. Attitude is something that you either have, and if you have the right one, they say make it contagious. That's exactly what you've got to do. But if somebody's got the wrong attitude, you'll never train that. So hiring for attitude is absolutely key. In some of our clubs, we have people join the clubs and go right the way through the ranks of the organisation who didn't have a fitness qualification when they joined us. I much prefer to hire somebody with an absolutely amazing personality and attitude and then train them for skill. And the third, and probably the most important, is live it. Live it and live it honestly. Authenticity is key. You can't fake a culture. You can't create a program that says we're going to have this particular culture and then ask everybody to perform to that culture. It doesn't work that way. A culture is either in the fabric of an organisation or it isn't. And therefore, it has to come up from the ground. And once you've got a culture that people want to be part of, then it will work its own magic. So make it authentic and live it every day.
Jan, thank you so much. And off the back of those questions, I've actually got one little bonus question for you, because
Sure.
I think probably a lot of owners out there would be thinking this. You mentioned making sure that we ask the community that our facility is based in, and that can sometimes be quite challenging. Are there any ways that you found have been effective in reaching them? I mean, how physically, how do you actually get to them to ask those questions? Are you doing a one-on-one survey? How have you gotten to them?
Okay, so we've tried several methods. You can actually buy mailing lists, which it's very easy in this digital age to get to the people you need to get to, if you're willing to spend the money that you need to get to those people. So you can buy the appropriate list to either call or mail. We found two methods, however, to be very effective. The first is to put together small workshop groups where members introduce you to their friends that have never been members before. Little tip, don't run the event in the club. It feels too much like you're trying to sell them something. Mm-hmm. You need to make it very clear that you're not trying to sell them a membership. What you're trying to do is get an insight into why they've never not only joined our club, but joined any club. And getting insights from those people that have always wanted to be fit, have always wanted to be healthy, but have never made the move. It's powerfully insightful. The second, and this is extremely effective and very simple, is backpacking at supermarkets. Sounds silly, but you've got supermarkets in all of your towns where it's quite frequent that somebody doing a charity job will be doing backpacking, helping people to pack their shopping. It's much easier to catch somebody and get them to be honest with you when you're simply having a conversation with them. So we had a very, very effective trial of having some of our staff packing supermarket bags at the end of a checkout and just casually chatting to people about whether they've been a member of a club before, and if not, why. But making it very clear in that conversation, I'm not looking to sell you anything. Yeah. All I want from you is some answers to questions, and it's in general conversation. That worked surprisingly effectively.
Wow. Were they wearing a branded... Sorry, Jan. Were they wearing a branded top when they were doing that?
They were actually wearing a top that had the charity that the supermarket was. So it was volunteer work in the community. So it wasn't seen as a membership promotion. Yep. It was simply seen as part and parcel of the conversation that they were having. Yeah,
and then you collected all of that.
That worked very well.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that, Jan. Look, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I want to thank you for being so open and honest and sharing that with us, because I think you've given everyone some really great ways that they can start to either have a look at the existing culture within their business, make some changes. I particularly love your suggestion about having that big conversation and asking questions to all of the stakeholders within the business. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Chantal.
Are you interested in increasing your centre's income and your trainer's income from small group training? Tribe Team Training is the new way to get more members engaged in small group training and paying extra. Click the Tribe Team Training link in the show notes or go to tribeteamtraining.com.au/podcast for your free formula to see how much income you can make from small group training.
Get ready for this week's bonus segment, your extra injection of information, education, and inspiration to strengthen your fitness business.
A quick reminder that our next FBP family meetup is happening very, very soon on Wednesday, March 21st. We're meeting at 5:50 a.m. at the main entrance at the Marriott Marquis San Diego Marina. We're going to walk and chat for 45 minutes and return back to the Marriott by 6:50 a.m. To register, go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, and up the top of the homepage, you'll see a link to the URSA FBP family meetup.
Precore Quickfire 5.
Now, I have something a little different for you today. Rather than our traditional pre-call quickfire 5, I have instead a sneak peek of next week's amazing chat with Amanda Bond. This is just the first 5 minutes of what is a huge discussion that we had together. I cannot wait to share the full version with you next week, but for today, here's a little snippet of my chat with the ad strategist Amanda Bond talking about the new algorithm changes for Facebook. How exciting is this? Welcome to the Fitness Business Podcast.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Your energy is amazing, and I can't wait to dive into this topic.
I am absolutely pumped. So I want to explain to everyone that we had set up this interview originally, and we kind of briefed you and said, hey, we really want to talk about retargeting on Facebook. We had all of our questions set to go. And then, of course, the Facebook algorithm bomb dropped. And I went, no, we've got to talk about that as well. So you have very kindly agreed for us to run through a whole lot of questions today. So
absolutely.
As much as I am capable of shutting up, I'm going to try and not talk too much and let you be in charge of the microphone. So look, everyone has heard the talk about the Facebook updates. We're all aware that there's been algorithm changes. So do you want to talk us through what you think are the top 3 things that fitness business professionals need to know about the new Facebook algorithm updates?
All right. I got some big ones. Are you ready for this? Number 1, this change is not new. The public announcement was new. It actually went into effect last July. I have all the screenshots on my phone of the actual notification about the update, talking about what the update actually said in January. So the day the update went live was just the public side of it, but algorithmically, it has been live since July. So 1, calm down. Wow. Stop stressing. Because all that happened was it was an uproar. It was like pandemonium and fear mongering around it. So the second thing that I just have to say to people is go back to what works for you on your Facebook page and stop worrying about what the algorithm is actually doing. Because when you didn't know the algorithm was doing something, it didn't affect you. It didn't show up that way. The minute that you think the algorithm is changing, then placebo effect takes full force and you're like, oh my God, this is the end. Everything's changed. Everything's different. And so it's the awareness factor. So the second thing is just go back to what works for you and tune out the noise beside you, right? And then the third thing that I like to just talk about, whether it's Facebook ads or organically, is have a strategy, a vision in place for where you're going with it. And I don't just mean have tactics. I mean, have a long-term game plan. Understand why you do things. Put in the work to understand your audience, their needs, what they want to do, or how you can help them or serve them. But stop focusing on the minutia. Stop focusing on well, if I don't put the link in the post and then I tag the link underneath with an image, that gets significantly higher reach, says the algorithm. I'm here to tell you that that's absolute nonsense because I do absolutely the opposite of what the algorithm says most times. And my engagement rates are through the roof, bigger than pages, 100 times my size. I'm not even joking you. The engagement on my page is bigger than places like Social Media Examiner sometimes because I have a vision. I know what my audience wants and I show up and be human on the platform and truly connect with my tribe. Right? My page, my business page, not my personal profile, is where I cultivate my audience and my community. And I have back and forth one-to-one discussions with everyone. So for you who's listening to this, ask yourself, how can I use my page as a way to facilitate conversation, as a way to create platform and authority and influence? But to do that, it starts with having that connection and really showing up for the community that you're creating around that page. Don't be that spammy McSpammerson who's just buy, session over here. And then we have a new product and then MLMs over here. Don't be that person.
Okay, that's all you get to hear for today. Make sure you tune in next week when we talk much more about the Facebook algorithm and we talk about retargeting on Facebook. That is all happening on show 158 that's available to download from next week. Before we finish off today, a reminder that all the resources, the links, and a transcript for today's show can all be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. A big thank you to our partners for their support and, of course, to our foundation partner, Active Management. You can go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/active for a free business development ebook. Thank you so much for joining me for another week of the show. I will see you next week, and remember, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.